Oh, what a lovely full house it is this evening, this gorgeous, gorgeous summer evening in Cape Town, which we've been waiting for, I feel like, for 5 years, because it's the longest winter that we've had in many years. There's a Cape Townian. So, okay, so let's get started. Just a hearty welcome to all of you. You know, the fact that you all have arrived tonight, you've taken the hour or your 15 minutes or however long you're choosing to stay, this is what makes the conversation, which motivates me to keep this platform going. I'm going to give a little bit of a history just to catch you all up onto where it started. It will take 2 seconds. I started this in lockdown. We were all isolated, and I wanted us to connect. So every week then I had a guest speaker in my kitchen on Thursday nights. The second year it went to every second week, and the third year to once a month. We're in our 4th year. And I'm so excited we can still continue this, because even though we do have the luxury of being together, we have the luxury in this platform to have various friends of mine that are sitting from all over the world. And I really have, from Ireland to England to America to and to Cape Town and Johannesburg and Mossel Bay. So thank you all for joining. It's really important to me. So thank you for giving me a motivation to keep this going. Most importantly, a hearty welcome to Nicole Smith, who is an incredibly talented, charismatic, amazing human being, who I was privileged to meet many, many moons ago, probably many lifetimes ago, and is a very gifted astrologer. I've always enjoyed chatting to Nicole, and kind of over the past few months, you know, I get regular newsletters from Nicole. She's incredibly gifted in writing, really entertaining, really spot on. Astrology is quite a complex subject. It has many, many layers, and Nicole has an amazing gift in making it accessible to our everyday, making it accessible and explaining various themes. So I just wanted to treat you all in having a listen to our joint conversation this evening. So welcome, Nicole.
Hello, it's so nice to be here and see everybody. And yeah, it's lovely. Let's get going.
Absolutely, absolutely, brilliant. So
what are we talking about?
What are we talking about? You know, I want you to start off. I don't know how versed everybody is in astrology. I mean, I have a good interest in it, but share with us where your passion for astrology started.
Okay, so like most 80s, 70s, 80s kids, it was Linda Goodman's sun signs, Linda Goodman's love signs, somewhere on parents' bookshelves. And
so true.
I think I've always been drawn to sort of esoteric, witchy things. And so that was the seed. And then much later in my mid-20s, early mid-20s, I had my first astrology reading, and it just totally blew me away. And that was like reignited the like hunger for astrology above or beyond sort of just sun sign astrology, which is generally how we all tend to come into astrology, just through this. We all know our sun sign, right? You know when our birthday is, we know what our star sign is. But obviously having an astrology reading made me understand that it's way more complex and way more vast than just the sun sign. And we're looking at a lot of different planets and different things. And I always had this thought after that reading that was so impactful. I always had this thought, you know, when I'm, 40, I'll start studying astrology. You know, I'll get to that mystical age of 40 and, then I'll start getting into it. But it so happened that I was in my, early mid-30s or something. And I just decided I'm going to do this now. And I started studying in 2010 with Rod Suskin and absolutely loved the course, loved what I was learning. Then he was offering a 3-year course. So I did the 3 years, but not sort of one after the other. I took a break in between. And, astrology is it's like a forever study journey. You never stop learning. You always, it's such a world of its own. It's a universe in itself. And there's so many little branches and rabbit holes that you can kind of go into and explore in astrology. So it never ends. So I'm still, I see myself still very much as a student of astrology, but also as a practitioner. Yeah. And I have a great love for astrology. So like the way I entered into studying astrology, it was obviously to learn the technique of, reading the planets and the stars, if you like. So it was very much a kind of academic, technical, mechanical, how does this work? But as I started to practice and practice and practice and read and do other courses and carry on, it's almost like I realized you kind of form a relationship with astrology, with that art or science, whatever you want to call it. But there's this connection you actually have, because you start to feel how, like, your worldview, or at least mine, started to be shaped by what I was learning and what I was seeing happen in my own astrology and other people's astrology. And it becomes very alive. So as I've moved in my astrology journey, it's become more like a living astrology. And the wonder of sort of looking up at the sky and seeing stars and the moon and the lights, it's kind of quite a deep thing. So yeah, it's changed and deepened as I've gone on.
I love that. It's because what you express is, when you really get into the meatiness and you find a calling, you find a passion, and you go into it, it's with such ease and grace, you can start absorbing that information. And as you get that information and, you and integrate it into your being, you can integrate it into your life. So there's no separation. It is such a vast science. We're not separate from the stars. We come from the stars. And so to really feel that in your being is what makes one a really good teacher. I've always found those that like feel it inside themselves. It's an easy translation.
Yeah, what makes me think of, just saying this, it's like when I was learning, when I started studying, it just blew my mind. And I don't know if this is everyone's experience, but certainly mine was that I would go to bed at night and it was like I could feel the planets almost like entering here. Like I would close my eyes and the planets would just, it was the most bizarre thing. I didn't actually know what was going on. It was just, I was very aware of this fact. I would go drift off to sleep and Jupiter would come, and then another, then Mercury, and because they have the glyphs and they would like be on fire or like illuminated, and then they would just like go in here somewhere. And it really, it's interesting when I think about it now and with how I connect with astrology, with the planets. It's almost it makes sense now. Because it is there is that interconnection. It is a living cosmos. My take on the world and us and where we are and where we're situated and the current moment and past moments and future moments, it's like there's this big interconnection. All living things, the cosmos, the planets, the stars, they're alive. So there's the sense of like bigness to it for me. That's kind of how I feel it.
I love that, because you remind us that we are so involved in the stars, in the planets. It's quite easy when we think of it, when you're not versed in it, when you don't study it as a topic. But it's an interest, you hear about it. It's quite easy, much like religions, for lack of a better sort of metaphor. But often religions are something, and astrology, it's removed. It's something over there. It's unattainable. But actually, it's it's part of where we come from. So when we get to know it and integrate it into it, and when you have somebody like you who almost like, I feel like the word scribe comes up, which is quite interesting. Intuitively, it comes up to my consciousness, because you scribe about it really, really well. And when you spoke about sort of when you went to sleep and you could feel it sort of come into your consciousness, it enters your forehead. That's where your pineal gland is. That's where your intuition is. So, when it's really, you are aligned with this topic. So, that's when you're on your path, on the right path. And we need light beams in this time more than more than ever. So it to me, it's very exciting speaking to somebody like you. So share with us. I know that you studied for quite a few years, like you said, with Rod. I know you've also kept on studying. I mean, Nicole and I, for all of you, just while you're sitting here with us, we connected. Gosh, I mean, we've connected over the years. We waitressed together back in the 90s.
90s.
Whenever we were in Cape Town, it was like Dock Road Cafe. And then we hadn't seen each other for years, and we reconnected on an astrology course, actually. It was definitely BC, which is, the second BC being before COVID, and your memory is better than mine, but I remember you so well, because we connected so well. So your studies have just continued over the years. Share with us the mixture of techniques and modalities that have come through in your studies.
Okay, so astrology in itself has a history. There's a history. You can just study the history of astrology without actually studying the technique of astrology and doing charts and predictions and things like that. So the astrology that I started learning was sort of traditional astrology, based out of the sort of Hellenistic and medieval traditions. So that means that, using the 7 planets that the ancients could see with the naked eye. So those are known as the traditional planets. So let's just tell what they are. It's the moon and the sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Saturn. That's the 7 traditional. Yeah. And then we move into sort of 20th century astrology, and that's where sort of we use the modern planets, some people call them the outer planets, some people call them modern planets, which is Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So I also worked with those planets in my studies. And then, I've done different courses with different teachers that inspire me, or who I feel resonant with, or just like the way they engage with astrology. And I've seen teachers then with lots of different styles. And at one point, again, it's just about, as you go through this journey with a particular thing, you start to try different things, and you see in one season something resonates and then something changes. So my point was, yes, different teachers, different styles. But what I've found interesting is that actually there's so many different ways to approach astrology. If we're taking it from an academic, there's evolutionary astrology, there's traditional Hellenistic astrology, there's Vedic astrology, there's so many. But at the end of the day, what I've learned, and what I'm learning, is that no matter how you approach a natal chart, right, it's almost like a portal. So it doesn't necessarily matter ultimately what technique, school of astrology you've studied in and worked in. For me, I've found that it does, it kind of, whatever opens that thing, and I'm losing language at this point, but it's like a portal. Yes. It's like whatever clicks. Because for me, when I look at an astrology chart, and it doesn't matter what techniques I'm drawing on or what's in my toolkit, something begins to open up. It's like a story. And that's why I feel that, practicing astrology and looking at my own and other people's charts, it's such a privilege, because you start to engage with your own story or someone else's story. It's very much like a story. So all the different techniques, all the different schools of astrology, you can cherry pick in a way, whatever works for you, whatever feels resonant or aligned. It's basically then the other half, that's 50%, the technique, understanding the mathematics, the geometry of the sky as it translates into sort of a birth chart, or a wheel, if you like. But the other 50% is then, how do you speak that language, those symbols? How do you unlock the patterns and the seasons of somebody's birth chart, their natal promise? You're born at a particular place, at a particular time, at a particular year, and the astrological world views that is not by chance. That is your soul's choosing. So that's the great intelligence, if you like, and the mystery of like incarnating. And so when you look at a birth chart, like, you're seeing the promise of someone's life, and you're looking at the fluctuations and the seasons and the growth, and which is a beautiful thing. I mean, it's beautiful. So yeah, so that's, I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. I mean, don't you all find, isn't that the most beautiful term she just used? The promise of our life, like of our potential. I mean, we need these phrases. And it's true. There is truth. Like, this is the truth right now. There's all sorts of realities going on. But like right now, where you all are sitting in your homes or in your kitchen, listening to us and having the opportunity to breathe in the promise of our life path, there's to breathe in hope, to breathe in opportunity. Just hearing you speak, with so much passion, one gets excited about it and feels hopeful. I definitely needed this conversation with you this week, because it was a really hard week. Tell us, share with us, so obviously, what is what share with us when you have clients or someone who hasn't been to you, they're not versed in astrology. What motivates them to go to an astrologer,
So generally, there's a few reasons why people would consult an astrologer. Sometimes it's just curiosity, somebody's heard about this thing called astrology and it tells you about you, it's just curiosity or wanting deeper insight into themselves and their circumstances. Other people are looking to make big decisions and feel a little bit, we all hit those moments where there's that crossroads or there's that blur and you're not sure which direction to go in, or and so astrology obviously is a way of sort of marking time and cycles. So it helps to orientate you in a cycle. So that's why some people would consult an astrologer, like, what's going on right now? What cycle am I in? Why does everything feel so difficult? Or why am I having such a good run of things? Like, everything's happening. All these opportunities are coming to me. So it helps you track time, track your cycles. So, sometimes people want an astrology session for, they have real deep, pertinent, urgent questions, and you can address those through an astrology chart. Also relationships, it's a big thing. There's certain techniques that you can use, particularly for relationship astrology. So that's, romantic relationships, work, parent-child, any kind of relationship, you can use astrology to look at those patterns with other people. But yeah, generally it's a mixture, I think, of curiosity, if it's someone who's never had an astrology reading and knows a little bit about astrology. So I always find the first reading that I would do with someone, there's a lot of information or education or explaining. It's almost, it feels like a little mini workshop among other things. And then people who kind of tend to return to readings, whether it's once every 6 months or once a year, it's then to start getting into that thing of, okay, let's understand the timing of my life. Let's understand the seasons. What can I expect to unfold at this point in time? Because someone's natal chart, which is, it's space and time. It's basically your date of birth, month of birth, year of birth, your place of birth, and your time of birth. And that information for any natal chart, which is a personal chart, right? Those are the coordinates that is required by an astrologer to map out this wheel, this the soul map, if you like, or map of the sky when you were born. That's what's required. So yeah, whoever wants, whoever comes for a reading, those are like the vital statistics, basic things that an astrologer would need. And then everyone practices in a different way and has different, T's and C's or things that sort of assist them. For me, it's very much, an astrologer is not an astrologer is not the same as consulting a psychic, right? Or even a medium who is connecting with the other realms. It's not quite the same. An astrologer is using an ancient technique to map out the sky with the belief that everything is interconnected, that what is happening here in physical earth is reflected in the sky, and the movements in the sky get reflected in physical reality here. So there's that symbiosis between heaven and earth. And an astrologer then will map out your chart, your wheel, and look at that and read the symbols. So an astrologer, as I say, has to learn the techniques and practice, right? So the way I approach a reading is usually I want the person to get the maximum out of the, say, 90 minutes that you would have in a session. And while I can probably see, without the person telling me anything about themselves, a little bit about what their particular concerns, challenges, events of their life could be, it's really my role to be guided by the client and let them tell me what they are looking to get out of the session. So I often always give people like an intake form so that they can orientate me, like, what's going on right now. And yes, I may see other things not related that may be helpful for them to know, but it's better for me to have as much context as possible, because in that short space of time for a consultation, then you can really go deeply into those cycles and really unpack them and timeline jump and explore when this pattern actually emerged the first time and the second time. Because what we start to see with astrology is that things repeat. Life is the cycle. We don't like learn something and then it's done. It's like, that's not really how it works. It's more, these things come back, maybe in slightly different shape and form, maybe a different level of intensity, depending on our age, our experience, how conscious we are, all of that. But things, patterns, that's astrology. That's how the seasons work. So in a way, I think it gives a lot of comfort in, to know that these seasons come and go, change, and then come back. It kind of does give a consistency to things, and it does allow you to accept the changing weather. Obviously we have to always, we have to live through these things and, in an embodied way, but it does help, I think, to have that map. It's like the cosmic weather report. So you kind of know what you're going into over the next 6 months, and you kind of can accept, okay, I can relax into this. It's not going to be that easy, but I don't have to like pick it apart or resist it. It's like, okay, this is where we are. So yeah.
I love that. So you help people make sense of timelines and cycles, and then it also picks up on, like, so then we can notice our patterns, that come up. What I'm thinking is, because I know that general sort of, we know, like you say, we know when we're born and what star sign we're under, but when you have a natal chart reading, you get to know what your rising sign is and your moon sign, right? So share with us what is the sun sign, the rising sign, the moon sign.
Okay, cool. So yes, as I said earlier, most of us well aware what our sun signs are, but as and what's quite nice is the thing, like a moon sign and a rising sign, these aren't totally unfamiliar terms. It's very much part of mainstream popular astrology nowadays because of social media and the sharing of information. This is not like out in some book that you have to go and figure it out. So let's talk about a very important point in an astrology natal chart, which is the rising sign. So what you start to learn when you start studying astrology or practicing astrology is that it's not just the sun. In fact, we have to really take into consideration the rising sign. And that is why astrologers go on about, I need your time of birth as exact as possible. So the rising sign is, if you think of the eastern horizon where the sun rises, it's basically the constellation that was on the eastern horizon when the moment that you were born. And that becomes your rising sign, also known as the ascendant. But I think rising sign is kind of a popular term. Everyone knows what that means. So the rising sign, you could be a Sagittarius rising. We know all the 12
Cancer rising. Right? I'm Cancer rising.
Okay, Cancer rising, no problem. So you would be a Cancer rising. It means that on that eastern horizon, the day that you were born, it was the constellation of Cancer there. But as a Cancer rising, what does it mean then to be the Cancer rising? It's a particular way that you go into and greet the world. So your sun sign may be, what's your sun sign?
Gemini. Okay,
so you may be this Gemini sun, but you're a Cancer rising, which is a very different energy and vibe. It's a different element. Cancer's water element, Gemini's air. So as a Cancer rising, you'll greet the world in a different way to that Gemini sun. And it's also almost like the first thing that people sense about you is the rising sign. Generally speaking, I'm going to keep it simple. So if we're at a party, I always say, like, if we're at a party and I just see you across the room, I don't know you, I'm not one of like your intimates, but I get to say a hello, how's it to you? I will get that sense of the Cancerian you, because perhaps I detect that, you know, you're quite emotive and you're quite caring, and you ask, you know, how are you? How are you feeling? And there's certain things about a water sign, Cancerian, that has that emotional, sensitive quality. And then also as a Cancerian, you may be a bit shy as a Cancer rising. Because if you think of the crab, right, there's that protective shell. So you will be sweet and kind and sensitive, but you may be a little bit, you know, protective or introverted. What's also interesting to know about the rising sign is that you don't just look at the sign. So for example, Cancer, let's just use that example. You have to look at the planet that rules that sign. And then we start getting a whole lot more information about you, about your body, because the rising sign is us from head to toe. It's our bodies, it's our health, our vitality, our personalities, how we go out and do things, also what motivates us. So already we can know just the sign of the rising, and we get a sense of who, a huge part of your being, you know, ruled by the moon. The moon is the symbol in astrology and other traditions of the mother, it's a very feminine symbol, like the sun would be a very masculine symbol. So someone ruled by the moon is it's very watery. It's very porous. You can feel and sense other people's needs. The moon is so much about what we need, our nourishment. So as a Cancerian rising, it will be very easy for you to tune into what other people need, and give that. So really just by that, we get a lot of information, and we then look at the moon and see then, well, what sign is the moon in? Because that moon is going to influence your Cancerian rising. So the other things that we look at, sort of the key things, the rising sign that I've just spoken about, the sun sign, which is kind of our inner essence. It's how we shine. It's kind of where we shine. We look at where the sun is in the sky. It also tells us a lot about where we shine our light and our brilliance and our confidence and our, you know, what gives us our sense of the who am I. That's the sun. And then the moon, we always look at somebody's moon because that gives us the emotional profile of a person. So it'll tell us about how you sense or feel things, what you need to feel safe and secure, emotionally safe, how you nourish yourself, what is it that nourishes you, how do you form emotional bonds. So that the moon tells us a lot about that. And just with the sun, the moon, and the rising, I mean, that in itself is like, you can go very deep with that. But that gives you like a snapshot of what, if you have like a natal chart reading, you're gonna start looking at those things.
Excellent. Yeah, it's lovely that you clarified that so well, because, you know, it's not like the rising or the moon is an unfamiliar term for any of us, but I, you know, often wondered, well, what is the difference? You know, what are the attributes that you see within the sun, the ascendant, or the rising and the moon? So it just clarifies it, you know, so much more. Now, I want to ask a interesting sort of, you know, probably pertinent to the times question. So if humans, if we, you know, if the planets and the stars are a map to the earth and what's happening, and a reflection, like you say, so do countries have astrological charts?
Yes, they do. Countries do have. And so that kind of astrology, when you start looking at the astrology of a country, it's called mundane astrology. And that's also like, it's also called political astrology. So you're looking at governments, and you're looking at the people, and you're looking at the land, and you're looking at the arts that comes out of that country. You know, you're looking at so many different, economy, or you look at elections, you look at, you know, in the olden day, there was the queen or the king, you know. So yes, mundane astrology is very old, very like the original astrology as well, you know, because in the ancient times, astrology was very much for royalty or for rulers or leaders. That was, you know, they had, and it wasn't just their personal astrology. In fact, probably the only royalty was maybe back in ancient times having natal charts, you know, their destiny mapped out. But it was very much for things like governing, you know, and those kinds of things. So it's a huge thing, the astrology of countries. And I found over the last few years as well, you know, as I've also like gone on my little meandering journey with the stars, you know, I wasn't sure, like, do the planets cause things to happen? You know, like people say, I'm sure everyone knows about Mercury retrograde, and it's because it's Mercury retrograde. Like, did the Mercury going retrograde cause my computer to crash?
Yes.
And I think, you know, I don't know. It's more for me, the way I understand it, it's the sense of reflection, this and the archetypal energies that are represented when a planet does a certain type of movement or goes into a particular sign. It behaves in a particular way. But when we say it behaves, it's not like the planet saying, okay, I'm going to pull this string on Earth and make that happen. It's more like there's the sense of it's an energetic season that we go into. And we start to feel that also, not always personally, because not everything in our natal personal charts are activated, but we sometimes feel these things in the collective, you know, like a Mercury retrograde and things like that. So, you know, when we're looking at our personal astrology, but particularly looking at sort of collective, mundane astrology of the world, right? It's not that planets are causing things to happen, good or bad. But it's more like we can again map these cycles, these social, political, economic, you know, all these cycles. If we pay attention to what was, well, we can look, you know, 300 years ago, what was happening. Oh, similar themes are coming up in the, you know, at the moment. Or it's very interesting. It's not totally my area of specialization, but I'm very interested in it. And obviously, I keep watch on those things as well. But I'm not, you know, it's not the astrology that I completely practice. I'm totally doing sort of natal. But it's super interesting when you start looking at that stuff, because again, it does give you a sense of what we can expect, what's going to come up in the world, you know, in that collective sense. Super interesting.
That is interesting. And so I would imagine then that like each year would then have an energy within it as well. You know, 2023 obviously must have had some sort of energy that it's held. I think all of us very much so hope that 2024 bring in a very a better energy and healing for it. So share with us what are the themes, you know, within the sort of common themes that have come up for you within the past, say in the past year. What are the common themes that have come up that you've noticed within, you know, where one doesn't have to get personal, but there are themes, like you say. What's coming up this year?
Okay, well, it's really interesting also. Like, I'll start with just answering that by looking at, like, in my practice and the charts that I'm working with of other people, and then we can talk a little bit about in general. But in terms of, you know, it's really interesting because you start to notice patterns. So when you start to realize, oh my God, I've seen 4 people and they all have rising signs in fixed signs, for example, or everyone's got, you know, eclipse points in this axis on the chart, you know, so you start to see these patterns. So, you know, again, what's interesting about astrology, it's a ways of looking and understanding time. So astrology is not necessarily going by our calendar, you know, January to December. It goes on its own planetary cycles and seasons, and that's how the cycles and time is tracked. So what I've been seeing in the last year, we've had, so everyone I'm sure knows about eclipses, you know, each eclipse happens 2 weeks of each other. It happens at a new moon and a full moon, and they happen on an axis, you know, so signs opposite each other in the sky, right? So what I noticed was the last year and a bit, up until April, in fact, we have one more in November now, but basically this cycle of eclipses on the axis of Taurus and Scorpio, those signs had eclipses in them over the last year and a bit. And so people with prominently placed angles on their chart in those signs, or planets, personal planets particularly, in those signs, I saw a lot of those kinds of charts being activated. So that's an example of like, not every single planet in your chart is living, like doing stuff. It comes in cycles at particular times. And an astrologer is able to tell you like when that's going to happen. But so I noticed a lot of like with the eclipse season of Taurus and Scorpio, there was a lot of people who have, you know, prominent planets, prominent angles, places. This was creating a lot of change, because what eclipses do, it usually speeds things up. There's an intensity about eclipses. It feels kind of fated and karmic. It just adds a real intensity to things. So I did notice just that was one of the things. I mean, there are a few others, but certainly though that eclipse thing in Taurus and Scorpio was active. And now we're moving into eclipse in the sign of Aries and Libra. So you'll find, I'm sure, over the next year now, going into the whole of 2024, people with prominent angles, placements in those two signs may feel things bubbling up, or some kind of dramatic changes, or, you know, realizations, those kinds of things. Talking just of cycles and things that you notice, often, you know, I'll find that people at a particular age are very kind of determined and feeling they need to have an astrology reading. So the planet Saturn, let's just, you know, a little lesson now. The planet Saturn is the last of the 7 traditional planets. So it's a planet that we can still see with the naked eye, you know, and that is a traditional planet. It's the ancients saw the planet Saturn as the bridge between this world and the next. And it's a very slow moving planet. So Saturn is often seen as a marker of time. It's quite a slow moving, yeah, it's a marker of time. Saturn slows things down. But Saturn also, it sometimes signifies like endings and beginnings. So there's a lot of like death and rebirth with Saturn. We also find with Saturn, the Saturn is also about structure, and it's kind of contraction. It wants us to grow through contraction as opposed to expansion. So you find, because the Saturn cycle is roughly 28, 29 years, right? It's a whole, that it takes basically 28 and a half years, roughly, to 30 at the most years, for Saturn to come exactly back to the point in the sky where it is in your chart. For everybody, it's the same thing. So I would find that when that Saturn becomes activated for a person, either it's returning to the place where it was when you were born, or it's sort of making a right angle to the place where it was when you were born, or the Saturn that's traveling the sky is now opposite your natal Saturn. You know, these angles become activated, or are activation points. And because it's Saturn, very slow moving planet, brings maturity, wisdom through contraction, through sometimes loss and grief. You know, this is, but it brings wisdom. So the lessons of Saturn can be quite like austere and kind of seem difficult, especially if resisted. But often when people are going through a Saturn moment, I will find it's like, oh, of course, they're coming to see this, they're in their Saturn return. Oh, it's the Saturn opposition. Makes sense, you know, that they're going through these kinds of things. So that's that on like a personal consulting level. And then like on a collective level, I mean, I'm sure everyone since COVID, let's just say COVID was the big visible and evident marker of, whoa, what the hell's going on in our world, you know? It was obviously brewing before. Everything starts somewhere, and then it started with something before. So it's this progression. But the COVID moment was such a stark, like 180 for the world. And everyone, you know, everyone's affected. And regardless of where you were, it was just such a weird moment. So if you look at the astrology of that moment, it begins to be clear. So if you tap into what are the archetypal meanings of these planets, when they were doing the things that they were doing round about the COVID time, okay, it's interesting. The heavens are showing us it's the time for this kind of thing to happen. Okay, this is the energy that we're working with right now. These are the kinds of things that could manifest in this era, in this epoch, you know. So yeah, and like I say, it kind of, you know, the things are hard, you know. Life, being a human being, it's a difficult thing, you know. And I feel like astrology can help us, yeah, just tap into the timings and the acceptance of the things when they're not so amazing and not so wonderful, and we're not winning at everything, you know. It really is comforting to sort of ride that wave. It allows you to just flow with less resistance. And also what's really nice is that astrology can also tell us when it's appropriate to be festive and seek out pleasure and do those things that lift our spirits, like when it's a kind of a imperative to do those things as well. So it's not just about getting through difficult times, or, you know, although that's really nice and helpful, but sometimes there's like a cosmic imperative to actually seek joy or healing or friends or love, you know, like, so these are lovely things to know, you know. There's always that balance. There's always the balance, good and bad. It's like kind of reminds you that, you know, there is some kind of objective something. It's not also personal, you know. There is that sense of like, if you can just for a minute see it that way, it's like, oh God, takes a little bit of all that heavy responsibility off you, not to bypass and not to not be accountable, but also just to see it in perspective, you know.
Yes, you're so right. It really is so important to get that that perspective from sort of an aerial view. Well, literally, right? Aerial perspective has so much value, you know, because we can get, in very intense times, you get very caught up in the microcosm of your world, you know, and it's like you're stuck in your tiny circle, and one of the most helpful things I often sort of see, I used to see sort of circles, and, you know, they're two intense things, extremes of it, you know, when you're in the middle of many circles, you're the dot, and then you have many circles around you, and your inner circle is too much for you. I always found it's very helpful to look at the outer circle for some reprieve and relief, you know. Look at the sky, look at the mountain, look at the big things, of just like, to put it into perspective, and the joy and the beauty of it. And then when we look, and then we could get the opposite, where you're looking at the bigger thing of like, right here, right now, where we at this week. Oh my God, the world's a mess. It's terrible. You're looking so beyond your personal circle. And what can you do? I mean, I think people are generally feeling helpless and useless in this difficulty, but you kind of got to go back into your inner tiny circle and go, look at where we are tonight. Look at the family I have. Look at, it was a beautiful day. You know, this day was beautiful. The sun was shining. That, you know, so it's an interesting thing when you say sort of, it's lovely that it gives that perspective of the personal, but then the collective, sort of integrative on your personal level, and then sort of the bigger perspective of where the world is. And I love that there's that opportunity of like, it's an imperative to find joy and have fun. Oh God, I want that to be the theme for the next month.
And the other thing, just talking about this, what I'm thinking as well is like, you know, yes, astrology is amazing, and we all want certainty and answers. I mean, that's also a lot of why we go into astrology, or you consult an astrologer. Like, you want that sense of safety and like predictability. And then you even want to know when it's not going to be predictable, right? But just listen, just what I was thinking is that also sometimes, and I think this is important for people who really love astrology and like jump in and consume it. And I mean, I'm definitely one of those people, like I consume a lot of astrology, but it is also important to remember that we are here, 3D, sentient, we have those lives. And while the astrology is a tool, but it's not the thing, right? So again, it's that thing of being aware or discerning about, you know, yes, I can use it as this guide, and it lets me know about different timelines and different like waves that I'm going to be riding through my life, and seasons for different things. But it's like, you still have to live your life. You still have to experience your decisions, your choices, all of those things. And I think it's always good to have that sense of like that balance or discernment around, to what extent do you just lean on the astrology? And it can be anything. I mean, it doesn't have to be astrology, it can be anything. So you got to, and for everyone, maybe that line, it's different for every person. Like, there's no like formula, but I think it's also good to get to a point where you can kind of also trust life, you know, regardless of what the stars are saying. It's always nice. Listen, it's always nice to see what the stars are saying and what's going on. I would say that, obviously, but I also think it's important to trust like the gut instinct you know, your embodied responses, your feelings, you know, like that's also, that's very real. And so that's just another thing to add. Like, you know, astrology is not like a cure-all, and knowing, you know, knowing what season you're in is not going to take away the fact that you've got to live through that season and really go through it, you know. So sometimes, so again, it's just something I thought of, because I know, like, also when you start to learn astrology, I mean, for me it was like super exciting, and you want to like explain everything through astrology, you know. And you kind of can in a, but I almost got to a point where it's like, you've got to find that balance of just letting things happen without thinking, what is it, or what's coming now. It's like, even with my own chart, I pretty much know my own chart in my own head. And then there'll be times where I'm like, I don't want to know. I kind of know what's going on. I know what's being activated, but I don't need to go in any more than that. I don't need to sit and study and look at the day that it's happening and the date and the time. And, you know, I don't need to go that granular. So yeah, it's just about keeping that. And I think that's an important thing to mention, just also around people's expectations of what astrology is there for or can do. You know, it's not like going to make everything amazing. It's just going to give you a kind of map to help you. Yeah.
I love the way you explain it, because I really think it's very important that people understand that, you know, whether they go to any kind of modality that is a healing form of a modality, that it's understood that it's to guide us. It's to guide us and to help clarity. It doesn't mean that we have to, you know, we have to deal with what life is life. And you know, I love your perspective, because it doesn't make it, the word I'm thinking of, it's kind of like we can get a little bit too over attached to this being the answer to, whereas no good teacher wants you to, you know, to look at things as it makes me think of, like, you know, as a yoga teacher, for instance, and having studied for many years or done many teacher trainings, people often look for gurus. And the thing is, you know, if you're a good teacher, you're not looking for someone to idolize or follow, hang on every thread. So what I'm saying is to hang on every thread of where things might be astrologically, using it as a guide to understand that good teachings are for clarity and for guidance, and to still take responsibility for where you are within your life cycle. So I like that you shared that difference, and, you know, without looking at the extremes of it, because it's quite easy to sort of want to attach oneself to things at the moment, you know, hooks for sort of anchors to just help me keep my head above the water. So, you know, but I think it's because of experience. You know, you've been doing this.
There's a moment where you do that, or you need that, or just that, you know, and then it changes. But yeah, I mean, I think, like I say, when I started studying astrology, it was like everything, and everything's explained by an astrological, you know, and what I've realized is just sometimes you don't see things in a chart. You're not going to see everything showing up. The instinct as an astrologer is to try and is to look at a chart of an event or a moment, you know, but sometimes it's not that. Sometimes you don't see it. Sometimes you don't see in somebody's chart a big event. Not everything is, I suppose, certain things there needs to be some mystery, you know. It's important. Yeah,
sometimes, you know, we need to understand, I think, that we can't be shown everything. Because we might not go through the tunnel if we knew everything. You know, if I think of some big events that, you know, not that they didn't come up, I didn't go for any sort of readings to find out, but, you know, if I, for example, knew some big life events prior to it happening, would I have had the courage to go through it as maybe gracefully as I did? I'm pleased I didn't know about some events, so that when they arrived, I just had to tackle it head on, and, you know, and then ask for guidance of what is the best way. And then it was super helpful for me. So,
and Elaine, just that makes me think of, you know, using astrology retrospectively. So we often think of astrology as like prediction and things unfolding into the future, or maybe the present, understanding the present moment. But what's really amazing is if you can like go to big events in the past or and then have an understanding of what astrologically was going on in your chart at that time, gives you such a lovely deep insight. Now you've already experienced and gone through the feelings of that event, decision, whatever, you know. And then it's sometimes interesting to track back. So that's also like what's so great with astrology, that you can do all these you can jump timelines everywhere, you know. So that's something that's very interesting just to track. Yeah.
Because, you know, in that backtracking, you know, isn't that what we all do? Like, if any of you or any of us is sitting here, like, you go through processes in your life, our evolution, we have learning spurts, there's healing that needs to happen. You have to sit with them. And you know, in order for us to learn, you've got to sit and go through it, and then to go through with the guide, backtrack into a timeline and go, okay, well, what happened in that process? You know, can I see patterns? What is the growth that has happened? Absolutely. I think that's a lovely thing for all of us to consider, you know, this desire of like moving forward. Yes. But in order to understand ourselves, we also have to see where we've been and how we coped to sort of gauge the progress.
Yes, yeah.
One is now, you know. Absolutely. I'm thinking now, you know, just as we sort of have covered so much, maybe share with us, is there any insights into how you sort of feeling and then sort of seeing 2024?
Well, I actually haven't done my deep dive into next year. Like, this last quarter of the year is my time to slowly start looking at the transits for the next year. But maybe what I can talk about is a little bit kind of where we are and where we've come from, just to, you know, for some people may track the stuff, so I'm not saying anything new. But I'll try and do a very simple, like little, not history, like, yeah, whatever, current affairs through the planet's eyes thing. Well, let's just take it to those COVID years, for example, because that was quite crazy, right? So what we saw, 2008, if we just jump back to 2008, that was like a really big planetary shift happened in 2008. You have the planet Pluto, which is like god of the underworld. It's the planet of, you know, destruction, deconstruction, and reconstruction. Quite volcanic. It's kind of, think of like buildup of toxic things sort of erupting, and then, you know, and then what happens, like the cleaning up and the kind of replanting of it, the composting and the replanting of things, right? So you have this planet, that's this force of a planet, right? Very powerful forces, the Plutonian forces, moving into an Earth sign in 2008, right? So you've got like this volcanic thing into Earth sign, into the sign of Capricorn. And if you remember that in 2008, there was the financial crisis where all the banks crashed and everything. So Pluto is a kind of a destroyer in a certain way. It's going to completely deconstruct things. And in an Earth sign, in the sign of Capricorn, right, where it's been till this present moment, it's currently in Capricorn, you know, it's going to go back into Aquarius, but it's currently at the end of Capricorn. So since 2008 to the present moment, we've had this Pluto in an Earth sign. So Pluto is coming to completely shake up the foundations in a very kind of volcanic way of Capricorn things. And what are Capricorn things? Capricorn is an Earth sign. Capricorn signifies tradition, structure, institutions, you know, laws, law and order, the old guard. It's kind of, you know, tradition, you know, that kind of thing is very Capricorn, just to keep it simple. So you've had this kind of underworld, shadow, intense sort of energy coming through this Capricorn sign. So all these things are going to be disrupted. And what we see in this Pluto and Capricorn moment that started in 2008, that we've been traveling through to the present moment, is we're seeing issues of institutions, traditional governments, traditional media, traditional everything like completely imploding. So already we're in this climate of all those things related to the tried and the tested, the traditional, the old, the rules, the hierarchy, that kind of stern Capricorn gravitas, serious, right? We're seeing this big disruption and having to look, it's sort of turned upside down, having to really look at the underbelly of those things, right? So that's Pluto in Capricorn. So if we travel along to our COVID moment, when we were in 2020, it was sort of March, I think we hit that lockdown moment. What happened between January and March of that time? You suddenly get the planet Saturn, which I've spoken about tonight, which is the last traditional planet that we could see with the naked eye, signifier of endings, of time, of the bridge between life and death, right?
Wow.
This very kind of serious, grave planet connecting with this sort of nuclear Plutonian planet of Pluto. The two of these planets come together in the sign of Capricorn. And that was in January. They first started coming together and kind of went on until March. And what do we see? We saw this the world turning upside down, something completely crazy happening. And, by March, when we all went into lockdown, we had this pileup of planets in Capricorn that would tell us that this is a moment of great intensity. So when a whole lot of planets like group together in a particular sign very near each other, we're seeing that there's going to be a lot of intensity around this particular, the significations of that particular sign and of those planets. So astrologically, we could see with COVID something explosive, volcanic, that's going to change things radically, that's going to feel like it's out of control, that it's just happening. We can't rein it in, right? And there's this real tension between Saturn that wants to create containment and keep things as they are and maintain the status quo, and this force of Pluto kind of bringing things up in this very volcanic, fiery way, and almost like this big global detox in a certain, in a way. And astrologers had said before, when they looked at this placement, astrologers were predicting war and predicting all sorts of things, and it happened to be a pandemic. But the Pluto-Saturn dynamic, if you look back, was also when the AIDS epidemic came out in the early mid-80s. There was a similar configuration, Yes. So just to show, so we've moved through this moment, and we've got another very important shift for us, sort of globally, and sort of in terms of epoch, like the age that we're moving into. So in December 2020, January 2021, we had this planet Saturn that had been in Capricorn with Pluto move into the next sign, which is Aquarius. It's an air sign, right? And the planet Jupiter catches up. And so Jupiter and Saturn meet in the sky at a very potent degree of Aquarius, which is 0 degrees. So the beginning, each constellation, let's just say each zodiac sign is 30 degrees, 0 to 29 points, So the 0 degree, it's a very potent degree of a sign. And you have these two planets connecting in the sign of Aquarius. And that's another big shift. Why? Because they're relatively slow-moving planets. And when the planets move a bit slowly, we kind of pay attention to that, because they don't come around that quick, right? So it's like, oh, this has been a while, So Jupiter and Saturn meet in the sky every 20 years, okay? But Jupiter and Saturn meeting in an air sign, right? This hasn't happened in 200 years. So that's a really wow moment. And of course, they've met at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So Aquarius, again, is going to get a lot of activation. This point in the sign of Aquarius is very potent. We're going to see that Pluto is coming to the end of its long journey since 2008 in the sign of Capricorn, and it's going to shift into the next sign, which is Aquarius, and spend the next 20 odd years in that sign. So we're seeing a lot of Aquarian things going on in our world. Aquarius is an air sign. So it's the spreading of ideas. Aquarius is also associated with the collective, but it's ruled by the planet Saturn. That's quite kind of solitary. So there's this, and it's a fixed sign. So you get the sense of Aquarius of the humanity, the big, the everyone, but also the outsiders, and so. And we see a lot of that playing out in front of us. We see that sense of inclusion and then separation or polarization. We're seeing how quickly we're moving into this digital age, We're seeing also new ideas of how to live or how to create community coming up. So we're going to be working through all these layers in this next, 20 years, but also a 200-year cycle that has also started. So there's different cycles going on and crossing, and so that's just to give a little. I mean, I'm trying to keep it very simple because it's a lot of information, a lot of signs and planets, and you can get quite exhausted from all that information. But just to give a small little snippet of like how we can see astrologically or explain or understand or frame what's actually happening and playing out in our world, So
Yeah. I really like the word you said, frame. It just gives me a sense of like understanding, it's we kind of just need these little just these little clips of clarity when things are so chaotic, and I mean, you frame it very well, but it just really helps a sense of almost like feeling held with knowledge. There's a sense of safety with it. So, I'd like to know, I can see, that's what I love about people keeping their screens on. And I love the normal activity that's going on, but I can also read and see that people have really enjoyed sitting and listening. So I'm going to just open it up to give people the opportunity to ask absolutely any question to Nicole. So I'd really invite you, please, even if it's a comment, how you felt about tonight, if there's a particular question. So please feel free, just raise your hand or press, an emoji, or just let me know. I'm going to look around the room, just see if anybody wants to say something. Yes, Mila, thank you. She's enjoyed it. I can tell. So if you want to unmute and maybe say, add to that, but thank you for the comment. Anybody else? Yes, Mila, go for it.
Hello. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, you can. Clearly.
I'm busy downstairs. I can hear my mom's echoes from upstairs. No, I just wanted to comment. I'm proud of you, Miriam. Her passion for astrology is like palpable in the household. You can tell that she loves it, and she's always reading a new book, or she's planning on acquiring a new astrology book, or she's doing a reading, or she's planning a reading, or both. But yeah, Mom, very proud of you.
Oh, thanks, Mills.
Thanks for sharing, Mila. That really, really is such a great testament. She lives in a house with deeply passionate astrologer, and lucky enough to be her mom. So thank you. Anybody else in the house that just wants to make any commentary? Yes, Karen. Do you want to just and was it Kelly? Was it your voice I heard? Saul. It's you. Yes.
Hello, sorry, I'm late.
Karen can chat. Yes, Saul.
Hi, I'm proud of you, sis.
Thanks.
Karen, I think you wanted to just unmute yourself. So at the bottom corner, you'll see that says mute. We can't hear you because you're on mute, Karen. So just
there. Is that better?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to this like technology stuff. Anyway. I'm always been very interested. So Nicole, that was great. It was very interesting. I've always been very interested in astrology, more from, I didn't study it, but more from a kind of intuitive point of view. I'm like 5 planets in Pisces, so big intuition going on. So, but basically I'm going to have my Saturn return next year. And I kind of know certain things that, about Saturn return and my own chart because I had it down longer. But I just want to know, are there any really significant months next year where the shit's going to really hit the fan?
So tell me.
From a global perspective.
Okay, I'm not going to comment on 2024 because I really take time to kind of go into the big transits. Yeah, but what I'll say, I mean, what I know just offhand, obviously you're going to get this dance between Pluto at these critical degrees, last degrees of Capricorn, right? Going into the 0-1 degree of Aquarius, then dipping back into Capricorn. And, Pluto only starts its full run into Aquarius at the end of, I think it's at the end of 2024, right? So we've still got some backwards and forwards before it just has this long, 20-year run in Aquarius. So we're still seeing these things that are starting to show itself, like we're still in the beginning. We're in the beginning intense phase, because once Pluto will probably move through the middle degrees of Aquarius. Now we're in this sort of new normal. But what we'll see at these critical degrees is that pull and that push very, very intense. And remember, we've got still Uranus in Taurus, and Jupiter is currently in Taurus. What I'm interested to see happen next year, just also on that collective thing, is the joining of Jupiter in Taurus to Uranus in Taurus. So there you've got the expansion and optimism of Jupiter, very benefic kind of cuddly uncle vibe, with Uranus, who's like the innovator, the revolutionary, who wants to like break things up and innovate and do something totally different and maverick, So you've got this quite an interesting mix of things, and it's in Taurus, which is the earth sign, which is so much about financial systems, money, the earth. So you're looking at even minerals, you're looking at agriculture, you're looking at land. So there's going to possibly be, not that we haven't totally seen it already, but maybe this culmination of those issues around money and banking and digital currencies and land and agriculture and rights to land and climate and soil and all of those things, and maybe the technology and innovations that are coming into those things. So that's sort of one transit that could be quite interesting happening in 2024. I think it's happening definitely before May. So it's like the first quarter of next year. You've got the Pluto still fluctuating between Capricorn and Aquarius. And then, of course, we've got the Saturn still in very early degrees of Pisces. So that journey is going another year and a half for Saturn to slowly make its way through Pisces. So, I mean, if you're Pisces, a natal Pisces, you probably understand a Saturn in Pisces really well. And it'll be interesting if you feel like sharing just one or two kind of keywords of how you've experienced a Saturn in Pisces. But, you've got the planet of structure and order and systems and hierarchy and contraction in the sign of Pisces, which is boundless and empathic and intuitive and compassionate, deeply compassionate, and like the poetry and it's boundless. So the boundlessness of Pisces. And then you've got this planet Saturn kind of wanting to rein it in, so there's that kind of tension. But I've always said I like Saturn in Pisces because it gives the sturdy, safe container for all that boundless sort of big stuff, that just floats and flows and permeates everywhere.
I can only sum it up in like 2 words.
Yes.
It like gives in a person, me, I'm an Aries, so I should be like this, but on the other side, serious, determinative purpose. That's
Love it.
That's all
Love
I can
it.
say. So
Yes.
yeah.
Sirius is very Saturnian. To be serious. That's very Saturnian. There's no nonsense with the Saturn anything. When Saturn touches something, it really brings a gravity to it, a seriousness, a soberness to it.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
I like the piece about the purpose, though. That's great. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, it's like a feeling. I do this kind of intuitively more than like, well, I didn't study it like you. But
but that would be your stellium, your bunch of planets in Pisces, right? I mean, there's a lot of like sensing there. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that is, very interesting. Thank you. I see you all wearing summer clothes, and I'm wearing a polo neck because I'm in Europe and it's winter, and I'm like, oh my God, look at them.
Very summery today. Beautiful.
Very hot. Oh, it's 31 degrees.
Oh, I'm jealous. Yeah. Well,
It's Cape Town though. Tomorrow is like 21. So
yeah.
then it's raining and then it's windy. And so we just today was a good day.
Yeah. Well, good
Thank
for you.
Thank you for sharing, Karen. That was lovely.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. It was very, very interesting. I really, I'm sitting here in my lounge. I just got back from work and I just ate something while I was listening, but it's been very, very interesting.
Thanks. Thank you.
And a nice way to enjoy an evening rather than like at my computer, etc., etc. Very nice. You should do these more often. Talks like this. Yeah.
Thanks for joining, Karen. Yes, Nina, unmute yourself.
Nix, hi. Okay, firstly, it's been so beautiful listening to you speak with such passion. I know we're family, but we don't get to see this side of you often enough. I know you and I might touch base every now and then, but it's really beautiful to see and to hear this knowledge and that whole thing of the planets going into your head when you started. It's very powerful, the image. So I wanted to ask you, in this time of really trauma, feelings and fear, and so one thing that's coming up for me a lot is gut feeling. And I think that in this day and age, we kind of don't really listen to it and trust it because everything is so, as you said, like structured and everything is, we're being fed all this information on social media and it's weird. Like in the last week and a half, my gut feeling has literally roared from the bottom of my stomach up. Like, so where does that fit into, I don't know, who we are as human beings and where that sits with who we are? I mean, yes, I'm Cancerian and I know that I'm sensitive and I'm emotional and compassionate and whatever, but this it's almost like when it happens, I'm like, do I trust this? Do I not trust this? Is this part of who we are? Do we need to go back to that and get back on a basic level, for want of a better word? Is this part of our makeup, or are we just so conditioned that we don't even listen to it anymore? And does this have a significant meaning to who we are as a Cancerian, Pisces, Arian, whatever, not Arian, Aries, sorry.
Big question, Nins. And I mean, I'm going to answer the question to say, I know shit, like I'm here, little being with you, finding my way through life, feeling my way, doing all the things, humaning. So I hear you. But I'm going to try and give a response, just what comes up for me when you say that, because there's like an astrological response, but there's also like a human response. And that's when, like, I think it was something I was saying with Elaine, like, this is the thing, we can look at anything with the astrology, but at the end of the day, we're having like very human experiences. So my like default, astrology and everything aside, my first default is like, we're here and now in 3D reality, like we're feeling stuff. We're responding to things, we're reacting to things, and it's just to try and stay with that as much as we can. And that's not even an astrological thing. That's just, I think it's just how we try and get through things as human beings. I mean, we all have the things that make us cope and get us through the day. But if we can, it's probably in the healthiest ultimately is to just go quiet and feel what we feel, and with compassion and understanding and acceptance, and finding those points of connection, which make us feel more present and more supported and loved, because it's that stream of love, to like make everything feel beautiful, even when it's really hard. So that's like the non-astrological answer, if that makes sense.
Astrological?
You know, from the astrological answer, then you could look at things that are happening, you know, the cosmic weather of the moment. You know, are we in between eclipses? Yes. Eclipses, you know, we in between eclipse season. Is the moon, it's working with the moon. And as a Cancerian, right, you're quite attuned to lunar things. So even for you in your system, in your body, this eclipse season, which happens twice in the year, you have a 2-week period at one point, and then much later you have another 2-week period of eclipse season. And you will feel it in your body, you know, you will feel it in your system. Everything feels a bit heightened in an eclipse moment. So that also speeds things up. It makes things really intense. So it could be, if we looked at your personal astrology, that there could be important planets, personal planets, or angles in your natal chart connected to where these eclipses are and were taking place. So maybe, you know, that's one level. I mean, we know, you know, we know the world, particularly this last 2 weeks, has been crazy. It's always crazy, but it's been particularly crazy. We get affected. Why wouldn't we? You know, anyway. And we can look at you know, we've looked at the astrological transits that reflect a lot of this hectic, you know, war, all of these things, grief, all the stuff that's happening collectively. So yeah, so we can see that through an astrological lens as well.
Okay, but so maybe taking it a bit deeper is that the, for want of a better word, the stereotypes of star signs. Oh, so am I just feeling it because I'm Cancerian and I'm sensitive? Or is this like, you know, do I really, actually, this is just a real humanoid person coming out and trust it? And so the stereotypes, I mean, it's very easy for us to slip into the stereotypes. Oh, you're Cancerian, so you're emotional and you're oversensitive and you're whatever. But we can trust that, right? I feel the need to trust my gut at the time, but without labeling myself, you're just a Cancerian and you.
I know exactly what you mean. So the way I see it, you can choose the astrological lens to look and understand things, but it's not the only truth. You know, it's you can in a moment choose, I'm actually just experiencing this as human. We're not going to try and put in a label or a box to say it's this, or disorder it, or pathologize. It's like, I'm just feeling a type of way because I'm a human being and I feel things, and that's how we all are human, right? So so it doesn't make it less true or not true on either side. Like you could just say, I'm also going to look at this, how I'm feeling through. Oh, I wonder what the astrology would say about this. It's just a lens. And it doesn't have to, it's not the only, it's just a way, it's a perspective. And that's why I always say astrology for me, it's like a worldview. I choose to sometimes look at myself, others, the world through a lens of astrology. It just gives me a different perspective. Sometimes a deeper, and other times I'm like, I'm looking at it just from a reaction, like just Nicole way, which is, I'm not explaining it to myself in astrological terms or to any other person. So I think it's just about like discerning and feeling what's in the moment, you know.
Cool. I love you so much. Thank you.
I love you.
Thank you, Nina. That was so lovely. Thanks for adding to the conversation. Tessa, she's got a hand up. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah. Hi. Nicole. Hi, Elaine. It's been a long time. A couple of years. It's great to see you. And Nicole, that was very interesting. And now I understand why you keep asking me for my time of birth before you can do a chart, which I still don't know, but now that's been explained. So thank you very much. So I'm just wondering, so to take this question back to you, so are you going to, can you take this further? Is there more studying that you can do, like do another course? Or do you just keep doing readings?
I mean, it's totally
is it like a university kind of, you know, you can do a master's, a PhD?
You can do, I mean, there are some universities actually in the UK that offer like astrology and cosmology as like degrees or postgrad studies. I think there's a university in Wales, and it's a lot more like prevalent and common to, like in terms of university education. Often it's linked to things like cosmology or beliefs, like that kind of stuff. But there's so many places you can learn astrology. Like you can just go onto YouTube, like you really can draw from a million places. And I also do love finding other astrologers that, become teachers, because I just like the way they do astrology, or I like the way they explain things, or just align with their values, or whatever it may be. So, I mean, like next year, I'm doing a course, Plants and Planets, so that's looking at the connection between the planets and plants. I mean, I've done a course on that before, like astroherbalism, but I'm going to do another one just because I love it. And so it's like there's endless. You can totally carry on till forever studying, doing courses, workshops, lectures, and yeah, it's perfectly accessible, astrology. It's like you can teach yourself really pretty much the basics, the foundations, through books, internet things, following other astrologers on Instagram, listening to like podcasts, all of that. So many resources, which is amazing because it just means it opens it up more mainstream on one way. And obviously there's, good and bad on both. I mean, sometimes with that, it's like astrology is not necessarily a regulated industry, for good or for bad. So anyone can call themselves an astrologer and practice for good or for bad, There's something really great about that. And other things it's maybe not.
Are you going to stick to this natal? And
for now, I have interests. I have like interests in things. I like natal. I like horary astrology, which is astrology of questions. So that is very technical. It's very, very technical, and it's good for my brain. Like I like to kind of flex that muscle a lot. And it's a completely different vibe than doing natal chart astrology. It's like it's very technical, but I really like it, and I'm interested in it, and I enjoy it. And I'm very interested in doing things like couples or synastry, where you're looking at 2 or 3 people's charts. I find that really fascinating. The astrology of families, also just mind-blowing, fascinating. I'm also really interested in the history of astrology. So like how astrology came to be and the different astrologers from way back. So these are all things I could potentially like study more of, like they all interest me. And at some point I'll dabble in all different places. But for now, it's definitely just natal and horary. Like that's kind of what my practice is about. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Tessa. Thanks for asking. Yes, your mom's on the line. Unmute yourself.
Mother. Unmute.
Let's see. It's the left corner at the bottom of the screen, and you'll see it says mute, and just press that. Right at the bottom. Not working. So find the bottom of the screen. Go to the bottom and the left-hand corner. Look for the word mute. Have to go, but loved it. That's Frigati. Thank you so much for joining, Frigati. When you do find it, then you can definitely unmute yourself. Okay.
Sometimes there's no mute. There's just like a little microphone with a thing in it.
Yeah. Have you seen an icon that just says that shows a microphone? When you find it, then just in the meantime, I'm going to just ask Nicole just to start them up. Firstly, I just want to say a huge thank you. Thank you so much for joining this evening. It's just been an absolute delight chatting to you as always.
As always, so nice to chat with you.
Yeah, it's so nice to reconnect. It's just been amazing. It makes me, I just feel like I might be time to come and have a bit of a reading. I'm super curious. I love the way you explain things. And it'd be a good time in my life to come come and have a reading with you. So I'm going to get hold of you tomorrow and then just see what your timeline is like. Let me know when your next available time is, and then I'd love to set that up and come and have a catch up and a nice reading. It'd be
lovely.
great.
That'll be beautiful. Yeah, and whenever you're ready, because these things you must do when you feel moved. You know, like
I'm feeling moved now, so I'm like quite a person of action. So I have no problem in like making a plan tomorrow morning. I'm going to make a plan with you. Even tonight we can do it afterwards. I also want you to share with everybody just in a WhatsApp, so I can put it onto the group, how to get hold of you. You know, I'm sure you're open for people to come and do readings, so I want them to be able to get hold of you, share your details. Those of you who aren't on my WhatsApp broadcast group and you want to hear more about the talks that I share once a month, please look in the group chat. My cell phone number is there. Take it down, send me a WhatsApp, and I'll notify you once a month about who's speaking. I'm still working on November, but I'll let you know as soon as thank you. As soon as I know who's speaking. In the talk now, in the chat, just that you all know, Nicole's website is on it, so please go and have a look and check it out. And just a huge thank you to all of you for joining this evening. It's been an absolute delight and honor. So thank you, Nicole.
Oh, thanks. And thanks to everyone who listened and just, hung out with us. So nice to see all the faces that I saw. And thanks for listening to me go on about my love for astrology. And you know, maybe this is like moved me to like, maybe I must do some YouTubes or some like things. I don't know. Maybe in time.
Absolutely. And maybe, you know, what would be amazing is come back to my kitchen next year and let's do sort of in a few months time, you know, you'll know when it's right. And let's have a look at where we are, particularly sort of what has happened now. And then sort of 6 months time, let's do a recap.
Let's do it.
So you booked, and it has to be before I go to Greece. I'm hosting a yoga retreat next year in Greece. So you booked for say May next year. May next year. So
perfect. Great.
And can I ask where you proposed doing a yoga retreat in Greece next year, or can you send me the details, please?
I'll send you the details. Did you take down my WhatsApp cell phone number? You got a pen and paper? Old-fashioned pen and paper.
Yes, I like old-fashioned. Yes.
Also, I write down everything. So my cell phone number. Thank you, Emily. My cell phone number is 083.
Yes.
259.
Yes.
3086.
259 3086 083. Okay. Thank you.
Pleasure, and I'll tell you the details. It's on Lesbos, island of Lesbos. First week of July. So again, just a thank you to everybody. I'm delighted that you joined this evening. It makes it so much easier when I see all your faces. And Nicole, you are a delight. I love you, and I will speak to you soon. Tomorrow morning, I'm making a plan. And please come back to my kitchen, everybody. See you next month. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Nicole. Bye.
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 Bye, everyone.